You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, Principal Matters listeners. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Monday Matters. Jen, each week, go ahead. Please start with your story before I jump into this week's topic.
Not really a story. It's kind of me patting us on the back.
Okay.
I went, Ohio had a huge conference they have every year, the 70th year of the Ohio School Board Association. And I did a presentation with one of our district's legal counsel and another deputy superintendent from a nearby district. And I went into the room, getting ready, you plug in all the things and you get the PowerPoint up. And there was a gentleman that was there early. And he was sitting in the front row. I said, "Oh, you sat in the front row. You have to take our picture." So he took the picture of the group. And then the presentation proceeded. Afterwards, he came up and he said, "Oh, well, you're Jen Schwanke from Principal Matters." And he said, "My wife is really annoyed with you and Will because I listen to your podcast at like 5 a.m. when I'm getting ready." So I said, "Well, tell your wife that Will and I are sorry." But it was funny. He had come to see this session, and there he was, a loyal listener, and I had no idea, and he had no idea. So it was a fun moment.
It's so fun. I have some really funny and awkward stories of people that tell me when they listen to my podcast. But it is so interesting, Jen. And it's also, I'm just so grateful for people that take the time to listen, but it is funny. More than once I've been in a session or even doing a keynote, and I'll get to the first part. Maybe I'll say, let's, elbow part, talk to someone next to you or something. And I'll start working the crowd so I can listen to feedback, and someone will grab me and go, "Man, you were talking for like 20 minutes," when I was like, "Wow, I know that voice. How do I know that voice?" And it just dawned on me, "Oh, you're the podcast."
Right.
And so it is interesting because we're audio. A lot of people don't know us. And I mentioned this in one of the recent episodes. Emily, our editor, has started doing a YouTube version of us too. So if people want to find the video versions of these shows, we finally gave in.
We did. It makes me a little nervous. Our last session, I had an allergic reaction and I was scratching at my eye. So our YouTube listeners will get to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and watch me claw out my eye.
It just is what it is. If they could see how often my cat tries to get into this conversation too, that'd be a lot of fun. This week's topic for Monday Matters is responsive versus reactive leadership. And I wanted to bring this conversation here, Jen, because in one of the sessions I was doing in a mastermind, this came up. One of the leaders was just sharing how difficult it is when you're sharing leadership with someone who reacts to situations and quote unquote the knee-jerk reaction that sometimes can make matters worse rather than better. Right. And we've all been there, and we've all been that person who responds really quickly to something before understanding it, and then you're cleaning up your own mess because you thought you understood it. And it reminded me of a story that my wife told me way back when she was still teaching. Students were having problems getting to class on time, and she came home one day and was just like, "Oh, I cringe every single time the PA comes on," because at that time there was a leader in the building who would just get on and yell at kids to get to class on time. And so teachers felt they just felt this ickiness of the collective scolding of everyone for the few who weren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so I wanted just to sit here in this Monday Matters just to talk about the difference between responsive versus reactive leadership. And I actually had a couple of scenarios, Jen, that I wanted to kind of bring in as examples. For instance, a teacher's missing professional development, and you find out that the sick day they took was actually a vacation day that they took, and you're tempted to just blast everyone at the next faculty meeting with a reminder of how to, with integrity, use your absence codes. Or two, the copy machine is broken again and the backup machine is out of ink and teachers are lining up wanting a solution, and you're really tempted to shoot something out to whoever's in charge of all of that, or pick up the phone and try to make the service call. Or you've had two students who just had a verbal altercation on a field trip, and the teacher brings them to you after the field trip wanting you to assign discipline, call parents, and you realize this is one of those situations that really didn't cross the threshold of an office referral, but the teacher's really angry and you're tempted to like take it over. What do you do? And so I'm just saying those things out loud, Jed, because they're just like, they're never ending. All of the situations that can hit someone within just 10 minutes.
Right.
How do you respond versus react?
Right. Well, as I read your thoughts on this, as always, my mind went all over the place. I thought, I was really hooked with that story about the intercom effect. Reactivity really does destroy morale. And so many times we fall into this trap of mass correction rather than having that brave individual conversation. It's a form of conflict avoidance. We feel really tough if we're yelling at a whole group, but we're actually being about as cowardly as we can be because we'd rather yell at 300 students in the lunchroom rather than go to the kid who was throwing the chicken nuggets and say, please don't throw the chicken nuggets. And if you do, I'm taking you out of here. So it feels tough, but it's really the opposite of tough.
It really is. And you were just reminding me of not just feedback I've received from students, teachers, colleagues, but I'm thinking of one of my own children, my son, Jack, who I just remember him saying that out loud sometimes, which was, as a student, there's nothing more frustrating than being collectively punished for something that's everyone knows who the person is that is not performing the way that they should. And if students recognize that and feel resentment for that or feel untrusted or no longer have respect for that person in authority, then we have to think about that collectively too when we're responding to situations. Right. I guess the harder question is, how do we invite our colleagues into that same mindset so that we're teaching others to be responsive, not reactive?
Right. Well, when you say colleagues, I think we could go two different routes with this. We could literally say our colleagues, our assistants, our network, or we can also think about that as teachers. And that really ties to that conversation we just had a week or so ago with Steve Ventura about collective efficacy. And really, here's the correlation. If a principal fixes something, the teacher's efficacy drops. If the teacher fixes it, their efficacy rises. And so, this is about supporting our people. I support you, which is why you need to handle this. Now let us work through how we can handle it. And so I think that the most complex leadership here is not to be reactive, but to be responsive. The most complex part of that really involves involving and supporting the teachers, the students, the families, whoever the person struggling through that really is.
That's so good, Jen. You've said several things that I want to circle back to. One is the courageous one-on-one versus the mass announcements and responsiveness. And there's kind of a principle that I try to hold on to here, which is that responsive leaders try to think or plan in advance for the scenarios and have basic protocols for follow through, versus reactive leaders. And again, we've all been guilty of these things, who put out the fires that arise without any preset protocols or plans for follow through. Right. And when you're committed to a principle, then you have to stop and think about what's the harder thing probably that I need to do here that's actually going to be more effective in the situation too. Not every situation allows you to do that, which is why sometimes I like to share your 10 rules. Can you remind leaders of what you think about when you're thinking about the 10 rules when it comes to how should I respond with that context in mind?
Well, are you talking about the 10 seconds, 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah. So I always ask myself, it's my 10-point rule, which is, or I don't even know what I call it. The rule of tens. That's what I call it. So, you ask yourself, what's going to be the impact or the outcome, or is this even going to matter 10 minutes from now, 10 days from now, 10 months from now and 10 years from now. And, if it's not going to matter in 10 minutes, don't do anything. Let it go. But if this is something, and there are these things where somebody's still going to be talking about it or feeling bad about it in 10 years, then you really need to slow down and think about the impact and what your actions are going to have. I just have a wonderful example of this that's really steeped in tragedy, and it just happened this morning. This isn't related to staff discipline or staff feedback or anything, but one of our high schools tragically, unexpectedly lost a student 2 days ago, and I happened to be at the high school the morning after, and my eyes filled with tears listening to the principal on the intercom. This was the opposite of the intercom effect that your wife had with the assistant principal. He was masterful. He had thought very carefully about what he was going to say. He said, and I'm using a different name, but he said, he welcomed the students, and he said, we are all going to miss Sarah, and I'm going to miss her. And he shared a quick moment that they had together. And he said, here's the plan for support. We will be here all day. I want you all to feel safe and heard. I mean, it was 2 minutes long. It didn't go on and on. It was brilliant. And I will tell you, I was in the hallway and you could have heard a pin drop. Yeah. Everyone was listening. And so there are times that you do that mass communication because you're bringing your staff together. And that's very different than the AP who was hollering on the PA about students being late. I think that was the situation, because that's a divisive tool. I'm dividing kids, because what happens then, it's like the Hunger Games, right? Students are looking like, well, who's he talking to? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Is it me? Rather than an inclusive approach. So I really thought that was an example of a leader who was so responsive as he was reacting to an unexpected and horrifying situation. And it felt like the school was together in grieving the loss of this incredible young person.
That's such a beautiful and helpful example, Jen. And it reminds me that maybe you're listening to this and you're just questioning some of your own responses, especially when you're needing to say something that's going to be for everyone. Those are really that's a crucial time in the life of a school. And I'll just tell listeners, in my practice, a lot of times before I would make that kind of announcement, I would write down that thing I wanted to say so that it's clear. But I would also share it with a couple of trusted people too, to make sure that they were able to say, I would massage this part, or I might make sure. And so somebody may have the skills to do that beautifully without that kind of input. And Jen, as much as you and I like to think of ourselves as wordsmiths, I still lean into other people when I need to say that thing that might be collective for everyone else too, because it's so important in the life of your school.
Well, and I haven't talked to this principal. I'm going to. I would bet $100 bill that he did exactly that. I bet he read it aloud to others, because his tone, and the cadence of his voice was confident, empathetic, heartbroken. It was all the emotions. And that only comes when you're not worried about the words, but you're worried about the message. So I bet he had done that. So, I'm so glad that you wrote this piece for us to think about, because we can sound hypocritical, right, Will? Because we'll sometimes say, don't talk to a whole group when you're really talking to one. But there's other times you do talk to a whole group when you want to get them together. That's the responsive part about leadership. And it's complex. It's tricky.
Oh, I'm so glad you wrapped it up that way, because you're right. That is what makes it responsive, is that there's no cookie cutter. Right. There's no just one way to do things, and we're going to do it wrong. And the other times we're going to do it right. But at the end of the day, we just have to ask ourselves, am I responding in a way that involves the same way that I would want a teacher responding in the classroom, that I would want my entire school community to be able to step in every day and know this place, and I'm just going to say the things out loud, Jen, this place has established protocols, and we hold each other accountable when we're not following them, and we communicate clearly through the process, and we're fair and we're firm and we're consistent. We're not perfect, but at least we have those expectations and we model those and we try to stay true to those principles over time because we want to work in a place like that.
Right.
And if that's the case, we know that students and teachers want to work in a place like that too.
That's right. That's right.
So Jen, as we wrap up, Principal Matters listeners, we'll put with this week's Monday Matters, I'll include the content that Jen and I are discussing because I wrote about this after one of the recent masterminds that I had to just kind of outline some of these scenarios. I even put suggestions in, Jen, for different ways to respond to each of these scenarios. So if you want to read that, you can always go to the post at williamdparker.com for this Monday Matters episode. Jen, how can folks stay connected with you and your wonderful resources?
Yep, they can find me at jenschwanke.com. Everything's there, and click on the newsletter link to subscribe to a weekly tidbit in your inbox.
Well, thank you, Principal Matters listeners, for listening, and tune into Wednesday's show as well for our flagship interviews with guests. And until next time, thank you for doing what matters. We hope you have a great week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.